Today's presentation will be about accounting as a means to make irrational decisions, which is probably a bit counterintuitive for most of you. So, what is the first thing that comes to your mind if I say accounting? Of course, apart from boring. Well, accounting probably is associated with words such as profit, such as efficiency, such as money. This is because accounting has been traditionally perceived as a value-free and neutral technique in the pursuit of rational decision-making. Accounting is seen as a technique which, through its own language, is there to just mirror a reality which is out there without adding anything to that reality. This vision of accounting has informed much of the research on accounting, including research on the history of accounting. This is because most of the scholars have focused mainly on the technicalities of accounting or have sought to demonstrate that accounting has evolved along a linear path towards more sophisticated accounting standard or more refined costing techniques. It has even been claimed that accounting has evolved since the 14th century, when the first form of modern accounting has started to develop. Since then, it has evolved from bookkeeping fiction into scientific facts. So accounting is supposed to be about scientific facts. This vision of accounting has been challenged by an increasing number of scholars starting from the last decades of the past century. Those scholars have refused to see accounting as a neutral technique, but have started to study accounting as an interested technique, as a technology, a set of practices and discourses which would be there to protect the interest of those who hold the supreme authority. This means that accounting has started to be studied in tight connection with the social and political context in which it operates. When we do so, we start to appreciate that accounting is not just a neutral technique, but rather it is a technology which is deeply implicated in the processes it is just supposed to mirror. Accounting can even be used to intervene on the processes that it is just supposed to mirror. Accounting does so by creating specific visibilities and objectifying abstract phenomena. For example, in the context of a company, accounting can be used to objectify abstract phenomena such as efficiency. So, efficiency in the context of a company, in short, can be abiding by a certain standard of conduct, which means meeting the targets which are included in an accounting document called budget. If you meet the targets, if you follow the budget, then you are efficient. Otherwise, you are inefficient. But of course, everybody wants to be efficient, because efficiency is such a deceptively desirable concept that if you don't want to be efficient, you probably have something to hide. At the same time, accounting makes visible certain aspects of the company, such as I said, efficiency, but makes other aspects invisible. A classic example can be the well-being of workers. It is contended that since the well-being of workers cannot be measured in monetary terms, accounting should not be interested in recording this very important part of the life of a company. But this is just an example, because over time accounting has served numerous purposes. It has even been used to promote irrational decision-making, as it was the case of the Alla Scala Opera House in Milan during the Fascist regime, which in Italy lasted from 1922 to 1943. The accounting system of the Alla Scala was used by the central government to ensure that the Alla Scala worked as an efficient conduit which would expose an increasing number of people to fascist ideology, irrespective of the consequences that this might have brought about. So before moving to the Alla Scala Opera House, just a couple of words on fascism and culture. To the fascist state, the education of citizens and the creation of a common culture was extremely important. Culture has the potential to reinforce the bonds between individuals, bonds which are not based on the traditional structures of religion or family. At the same time, culture is critical to most nationalist movements because it helps to create a discourse of us and them, which is critical to most nationalist movements. And we have examples, for example, in Marine Le Pen's movement in France, but also in a way, it also happened here in Britain after Brexit. Anyway, to the fascist, culture had the fundamental aim to reinforce, to tighten the bonds between individuals and making them aware of their belonging to a wider organism, which is, of course, the glorious Italian nation, to which they had to contribute selflessly. Theatre and opera within the cultural domain were extremely important because, according to the fascists, theatre and opera, by staging noble and masculine passions, the fascists claimed, they can awaken the people's best virtues and make them aware of their belonging to a glorious community. So, the Alla Scala Opera House. The Alla Scala Opera House at the time was of course, the most important opera house in Italy and probably one of the most important in the world, a status which the Alla Scala enjoys, of course, also nowadays. It was founded in 1776 with the help of wealthy citizens in exchange for ownership of the boxes in the new theatre. It has always played a key role in the cultural but also political life of the city of Milan, such as when Napoleon celebrated his triumph in the Opera House, but also when Italian patriots in the 19th century met in the foyers of the Opera House to escape control by Austrian police. In 1920, the Opera House was set up by the Socialist Municipal Council of Milan in the form of an ente autonomo, which means autonomous body. In the Italian law, an autonomous body is a public body which is completely separated from the municipality and which can enjoy its own management and dedicated accounting system. So at the time when the fascists came into power in 1922, the Alla Scala had been already set up in the form of an autonomous body, and the owners of the autonomous body were the box holders and the municipality of Milan. It has been agreed among the owners of the Opera House to run the Opera House in the form of an autonomous body for a 9-year trial period, at the end of which a decision had to be made whether to continue as such or not. During the trial period, the most important source of revenue was the sale of tickets, with prices kept very high so that the Opera House was a privilege of the better off. The financial system, the accounting system of the organization was based on two main documents: a statement of financial position, which in a few words lists the properties and debts of the organization, and an income statement, which lists revenues and expenses of the organization for the sake of calculating the profit or loss for the year. Attached to these documents was a report prepared by the director of the organization. It is pretty clear that the accounting documents were mainly used during the trial period for making rational decisions, as you would expect. This is demonstrated by recurrent cuts to costs and also unprofitable performances. So, in short, profit was a key aim for the Opera House, and it was consistently achieved also by the means of accounting. During the 9-year trial period, there was not a strong control exercised by the fascists over the organization, but the situation was soon to change at the end of the 9-year trial period in 1929. By 1929, Mussolini's dictatorship was well established, and Mussolini was ready to go out to the people, which means start the process of fascistization of the Italian. To this end, control of the producers of culture was critical. And as far as Alla Scala is concerned, this meant that the box holders were dispossessed, and the only owner of the autonomous body remained the municipality, which was entrusted with the duty to control what was going on at the Alla Scala. This meant that political strategies started to be implemented. Fascist policies started to be implemented in the form of a widespread reduction in ticket prices and presentation of low-price shows. The obvious aim was to open the Opera House to an increasing number of people so that an increasing number of people could benefit from the magnificence of the performances staged at the Alla Scala, so that those who were in attendance could see the magnificence and power of the Italian nation mirrored in the magnificence of the performances staged in the Opera House. This change meant also an evolution of the accounting system, and in particular the statement of financial position, and most especially the income statement, started to become more synthetic and just focused on a few items in order to make control easier. This doesn't mean that detail was lost, because the director's report provided extra information, a wealth of information including graphs, so that both the management of the institution and the municipality was provided with plenty of information to understand what was going on at the Alla Scala. However, this wealth of information made it very visible some aspects, among which an increasing gap between the cost of performance, which is here in blue, and the revenue from ticket, which is in orange. Of course, this increasing gap was made visible but was never addressed, even though it had the potential to endanger the very life of the institution. This is because this served a political purpose. The less the Alla Scala earned from the sale of tickets, the more it showed its commitment to abiding by fascist regulation, and the more it showed its contribution toward the construction of the fascist state. It doesn't come as a surprise that at the end of the season 1935, the director of the institution highlighted how the most important achievements for the season were the creation of a playbill which could interest the audience, the presentation of the best contemporary artists, and an adequate reduction in ticket prices. There is no mention whatsoever to the issue of declining revenue, no mention to the issue of increasing cost, no mention to the need to achieve efficiency and profit. Income was not even the main driver used to decide whether a performance had to be staged or not, because it was much more important to consider its celebratory importance. So having financial statement, and most especially an income statement which was made up just of a few items, clearly made visible how the Alla Scala was seeking to achieve the aims of fascist policies in the form of a constant decrease in revenue from the sale of tickets. At the same time, it was extremely useful for the central government to control the activity performed at the Alla Scala and to show that the Alla Scala was increasingly dependent on the state. Because when revenue started to decline, revenue from the sale of ticket, then the state had to step in and provide extra revenue in the form of state subsidies. Those subsidies became 50% and even 70% of the entire income of the organization, so that the income statement made it very clear to the organization this effect, so that they had no other choice but to abide by the decision made by the central government. The situation was to change again in 1936 after the conquest of Ethiopia. After the war on Ethiopia, the fascists gained unprecedented consensus, and Mussolini was then ready to take a further step in the process of fascistization of the Italian in order to prepare them for the unavoidable clash with other nations, which is, of course, World War II. This meant that a new ministry for popular culture was created and a new law was passed according to which all the opera houses in Italy had to be set up in the form of an autonomous body. So the model developed at the Alla Scala was spread all over Italy because it made control by the central government easier. The new ministry was also put in charge of controlling the activity of every Italian opera house, and every Italian opera house was requested to send their financial statements to the ministry for approval. At the same time, the ministry was entrusted with the duty to appoint the key figure of the opera house, that is the superintendent, which replaced the existing director of the organization. So this meant, as far as the Alla Scala is concerned, another change. The price of the tickets was decreased again, and new low-price shows were presented. For example, the so-called Saturdays at the theater for the working class. As far as accounting is concerned, this meant that the accounting documents became even more synthetic to ease control at central level, synthetic and focused on key information. But key information, yet again, is not information on efficiency, but it was information such as the quality of the performance staged or attendance at the performances. All information which could have been embarrassing for the government was removed, irrespective of the function it played. It was the case of some attachment to the financial statement where the constant delays in paying state subsidy was clearly highlighted. And of course, these documents were critical to preserve the financial health of the institution. However, since they could have embarrassed the document, they were removed, irrespective of the potential issues they could have brought about. It was clear by then that the most important thing was to comply by fascist policies, irrespective of the consequences of this behavior. It is interesting to notice that the reports prepared by the superintendent started to become dense with fascist rhetoric. For example, they were closed by the fascist closing salutation vincere, which means win. They meant win the war, something that obviously they didn't achieve. So, to the fascists, the moral citizen is the citizen who is aware of their belonging to a wider organism, the nation, and who is able to contribute selflessly to that nation. In the same way, every fascist institution is requested to contribute selflessly to the point of self-sacrifice to the construction of the fascist state. So this was clearly visible, clearly perceived by the superintendent, who in 1940 commented, noticing that the Alla Scala played a strong political and social function. In this regard, every formula or accounting result loses its significance. So accounting gave priority to certain aspects of the life of an institution, while didn't give the same visibility to other aspects. This was done to create a partisan reality which would ensure that the contribution of the Alla Scala to the development of the fascist state were made visible to the central government in Rome. At the same time, accounting helped the government to understand easily what was going on at the Alla Scala, reinforcing to the Alla Scala the need to comply by fascist policies irrespective of the consequences on the financial situation of the organization. So the case of the Alla Scala has demonstrated how accounting is not always a neutral technique in the pursuit of rational decision-making. Accounting is deeply implicated in the environment in which it operates and can even be used for irrational decision-making when this serves a political purpose. Thank you for your kind attention.